Hey everybody, good morning. As I clear my throat after the microphone goes live, thank you so much for listening today. Let me turn off the music here. My name's Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio, and it is the 2nd of May. It is May 2024, which means we're getting to June, okay? And you know what June means, okay? But whatever. We'll move on from that. As far as education goes, it's all good. All right, I'm happy to say that we have Sarah McNeil with us today. I'll bring her on in just a minute. Sarah's the VP of Professional Development, a long-time educator, having worked for a long time in Los Angeles Unified School District. But now she's the VP of Professional Development at a company called Thinking Maps. I love the name. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because this uses visual skills to teach critical thinking. And she's going to explain it a lot better than I did, with a lot more than just one sentence. So stay tuned. We'll have Sarah on with us in just a few minutes to talk about Thinking Maps. We're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org, ace-ed.org. That's the home website of our American Consortium for Equity in Education. And we have our Equity Awards program over there, our magazine. The website's chock full of information. It's all free over there. It's built for educators in pre-K-12. Anybody can go over. No tricks. Please check it out. Tell your friends. What can I say? Okay. ace-ed.org. We'll archive over there without question. Now, without further ado, let me cross the country all the way out to California. I'm in Maine, and say hello to Sarah. Hi, Sarah McNeil. It's Larry here.
Hi, Larry Jacobs. How are you this morning?
I'm just fine. How's the weather in L.A.?
You know, it's lovely. It's been raining a lot, which is rare for us, but it's back to being beautiful. So
that's good. I'm glad. I love it out there. I do indeed. And I live 3,000 miles from you in the great state of Maine, where it rained this morning, as a matter of fact.
There you go. That's more common in Maine.
Certainly is, and we can use more. We can always use more, whatever. Okay, I love the name of the company, Thinking Maps, and I just think that's really cool. And it's one of the things that I hope you capitalize on that, because it's really cool. But this is a very cool product. And Sarah, before we get into Thinking Maps, just talk about what your background is. Everybody will want to hear that, since you're the VP of Professional Development. Yeah,
I know. I find myself here, surprisingly.
This is good.
Classroom teacher for almost 17 years. And
what did you teach? What did you teach?
I taught every grade level in K through 6, with the exception of kindergarten and second grade. So first, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Yes, and you move around a little bit. You find your home.
Good.
And then you're happy.
It's good. You bring a good background to this. Okay, I love this. Go ahead.
Yes, yep, definitely. Classroom teacher, all the way. Thought I'd die in the classroom, Mary. Really, clutching chalk initially, right? But now
I hope you don't die for a long time. But let me make the point: you still might. You never know. You never know.
I know.
Visit a classroom, and that's the end. Who knows? Yeah.
I'm just in a different classroom now.
There you go.
So I was sent to a training by my principal, who was really kind of on the cutting edge of a lot. She would send us to a lot of things and was great, trusted us, and let us try things out, and what worked we stuck with, and came to a Thinking Maps training and loved it, just loved it, brought it back. It was simple, yet had great results, right? It was a strategy, it wasn't a program. And even back then we were drowning in programs, right?
Yeah.
And loved it, and then was exposed to the writing program. And the writing program was what pulled me out of the classroom. It was it capitalizes on the maps and really teaches you how to be a writing teacher. And I kind of made the leap. I was doing per diem work and then became a consultant, and then find myself here as VP of Professional Development.
I think that is great, and it's something, and I always say this to educators. Of course, we like educators in the classroom, but you're still in education, okay? And it's a very symbiotic relationship between the industry and what the industry creates and what teachers need, okay? The one couldn't exist without the other. It's that simple, okay? So you're still as much a part of education as you always have been. And I always say to educators, you have no idea of the incredible skills you have from your background as education, should you decide to leave the classroom. There's a lot of great stuff out there you can still do and still impact kids. There you go. That's my speech for today, Sarah.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. I feel the same way. I loved teaching kids, and I wasn't sure if I would love teaching teachers as much, and I do. I do.
Right.
I think they are an extraordinary group of people with an incredible skill set and a very difficult job, and the overwhelming majority of them are doing it really well. So
yeah,
it's fun to
actually,
be a part of that.
that's a great thing you say. We'll get into thinking maps in a second, but a lot of people don't realize how good teachers are everywhere. Okay, and when you come into the industry, you're not just dealing with the folks in your school who you see every day. Okay, you're dealing with people all over the country at all different grade levels, and it's really just fascinating. Okay, how good educators are at their job. I couldn't agree with you more. So now, okay, tell us about thinking maps. Okay, and I'm just going to preface it this way. Visual patterns, I got this off your website, visual patterns that correlate to specific cognitive processes with a whole school, which you mentioned, a whole school brain-based approach to teaching and learning. Okay, Sarah McNeil, that's your intro. You're on. Tell us about thinking maps.
Well, you kind of nailed it, Larry. We've been around for over 25 years, and it is definitely a whole school approach. So you said exactly what they were. They are a set of visuals, and each one is designed to activate and connect to a specific thought process. So describing, comparing, contrasting, classifying, cause and effect. And if you start these in kindergarten and they're being used grade level to grade level, then you get into secondary, content to content, an automaticity comes with them. And then you don't expend as much cognitive energy on figuring out how to process the information. You can really spend more time on the content, which is what we want. And we do that in a lot of ways. So mainly, I'll make it super simple. It's a visual, and connected to it is cognitive language associated with that thought process. So
explain. Take it further.
Okay.
Okay. And remember, nobody can see what you're doing. This is actually fun. It's like giving your kids an assignment. Nobody can see this. Yeah.
I'm gesturing like crazy.
Verbally, yeah. I know you're using your hands now and all that sort of stuff, but you can do this. Okay, it's fun.
I can. Okay, so I'm looking at an assignment, a task, a question, a prompt, anything. And in that, if I'm a teacher, I'm looking at a standard, right? And there's always content that you're supposed to be communicating, but there's also a cognitive behavior that you're supposed to engage in. So let's say I'm talking about what were the causes of the American Revolution, let's say. Well, that word causes tells me and tells a student who's fluent in the math that you're asking me to think in a cause and effect way. And then I instantly associate that with a visual that I can use to capture that information. Okay? If I see what are the similarities and differences.
Let me ask this, Sarah. And I tried to look on the website, but I didn't really understand it. You're going to help me here. Well, and by the way, it's thinkingmaps.com, and I do have it linked here as you're listening. Okay? But tell me, what is on that visual that makes this possible? And you said something. You used that word automaticity or something. I didn't know that word. Okay. And do you use the same visuals year after year or minute after minute? How's it all put together? Yeah. Talk about what that visual is. Help me.
I mean, I feel silly talking about how powerful, but it's circles and squares. To be quite frank, it's circles and squares and arrows. And okay, so we sequence in kindergarten. We also sequence in AP Calculus. We actually also sequence on the football field. If you're going through the steps of a play, right, that your coach has called, you sequence throughout your entire academic career, and that goes into grad school and then into the workplace, right? So imagine that you're using the same visual every single time you're doing that. And how much time that saves you, and that's what I mean by automaticity. So things that become a pattern in your brain, neurons that fire together get wired together. So the minute I see one of those cognitive vocabulary words or a signal word in a text, I instantly understand how you're asking me to think about something. What? And this enables kids to engage in content. It activates metacognition, which is a word I know it's kind of a buzzword, I think, in education right now,
is.
But and of course, I can't teach you metacognition because metacognition is thinking about content. But what it is recognizing how you're thinking and choosing the way you're thinking about something. And the visual gives you a concrete representation of abstract ideas.
So how would you use this? And I'm going to keep digging a little deeper into the weeds. How would you use this in third? I'll skip second grade like you did. Okay. How would you use this in third grade as you would in seventh grade?
Okay, so let's take. I'm in a language arts class, ELA, in eighth grade, and I'm reading a piece of text, and it asks me to look at the similarities and differences between characters. It asks me to do character change over time. Right? And so they're asking me to describe a character, as it changes over time. Well, the minute I hear describe, we would use what we call a bubble map, right? Which is you're capturing descriptors. But then we would also embed that in a flow map, which is a sequencing map. And so you would have a square, and inside it you would have the other visual that represents the describing, and then you'd have another stage, and you'd have that visual inside, and a final stage, and then you would give you character change over time. You could also throw in another kind of thinking, because kids are being asked to think in really layered ways, right? It's not just a single thought process when you're tackling something. So then you might also throw in what we call a multi-flow map, which is cause and effect thinking over what caused that change over time. Now, the difference between third and seventh is the complexity of the text that they're engaging in. Right? Okay. Let's say I have to write something about it now. You want me to write a piece about that. I text structures. There's a text structure, and there's a visual, one of these visuals that matches each of the text structures the kids are asked to produce, right? They're asked to do narratives, which is sequential. Cool. They're asked to do opinion or argumentative pieces where you have an opinion or claim and have to give reasons. That's cause and effect thinking. Right? So I would state my claim, and I'd have my reasons written in squares on one side. Or if you're asking me to write informative or explanatory text, they're asked to produce compare and contrast compositions and cause and effect compositions and recounts of events in history. And each one of those is represented by a visual map that stays consistent, Larry. That's the key. There's two big differences because I hear a lot, aren't these just graphic organizers, right? It's fancy graphic organizers. So, true, right? And there's enormous, the two big, huge differences are, one, that it never changes. The visual will always be the same if you're thinking in a certain way. And that carries you as this tool, this kind of portable tool as you move your way through as a student. Right? The other thing is that they're constructed by the students. So these aren't things you run off and hand them. These aren't. If I am going to describe character over time, maybe I'm going to have 2 descriptors while someone next to me is going to use 5. And they are designed for the way you think about things. So some people see things in big chunks, and some people see things in smaller chunks. But I actually get a window in how the student is thinking because they're constructing their own thinking with the map.
Sarah, who came up with this? No, it's 20 years old, but who came up with it?
Well, Albert Upton is the one who originally identified these 8 core cognitive processes, but then they were expanded upon by David Hirely. And then we got in our hands on them as the company, and David is still has a thinkingmaps.com thinking foundation. I'm sorry, I'm not saying that website correctly. Cool. He also does a lot of research, but he came up with them, and then it's been extraordinary over the last 25 years how time has changed. Education has changed and what our expectations are, and the beauty is the maps every single time have been the answer for me and for so many teachers, because as long as you're asking me to think, I can use them.
Is it harder to get teachers or the students involved in it the older they are? I'm thinking of like language. Okay, it's always easier to learn a language when you're younger as opposed to when you're older. Okay, and which is why schools, and when I went to school in Philadelphia 1,000 years ago, I don't know why they waited till 9th grade to start teaching us language. They should have started in 2nd grade. Okay, but that's besides the point. Teach you Spanish or French or whatever they want. They're so ridiculous. Okay, but they were stupid as I am now. So let's go on to that. Okay, because somebody 50 years from now will think of something better than what I've thought of. Okay, but my point is, this is a whole school approach. But let's just do K6. But there are some kids, when a school adopts it, that are already in 5th and 6th grade. Other kids are in kindergarten or 1st grade. Okay? And so when they get to 6th grade, they'll have this nailed. Okay? But the kids who are already in 5th and 6th, okay, or whatever, okay, they're starting, so to speak, from scratch. Okay? What's the difference to the teacher? How does it work grade level? You know what I mean? By grade like that.
Kids, Larry, they get it so quickly. They really do. It depends on the fluency of the teacher. So I'll use my own kids. I have 2 examples for you. One, my own kids, because that's an elementary example. So it was used, as usual. How it rolls out really depends on leadership and how often it's being, sustained at a school site. But my kids, they all had the same, let's say, 3rd and 4th grade teacher. They did. And then they came from a teacher who used them occasionally, right? Not necessarily the way that they're designed to be used. Phenomenal teacher, by the way. I put all of my kids in her class, so this is no disparagement at all. But when they got into the 3rd and 4th grade classroom where the teacher was fluent in this, it really was an integral part of how she taught. My kids had it in weeks. I mean, it was they got it. Because this is the way the brain works. It really is. Your brain is a pattern detector. Your brain is an image processor, not a word processor. And so it is designed to, it's designed to mirror how our brains work.
Yeah, everybody sees the same thing, but not everybody hears the same thing, okay, or says the same thing. That's an interesting point. I never heard it like that. But we are visual,
And I have one other example. I have a colleague, and her daughter really wasn't formally introduced to them until 8th grade. The elementary school wasn't using them, and her mom did them with her, but really just at home on occasion.
Right.
She has a map of her daughter when she was 3, showing the relationship between the Disney characters, and they were making tactile maps. But in 8th grade, she really was introduced to it, and she probably got more pushback because this is what her mom was doing. Her mom was training it, right? And you don't want to do what your mom is doing. But she was also one of those kids that got things really easily. And as a result, when she came across something she didn't know how to tackle, was just really frustrated, right? I don't know what to do. And her mom said, why don't you map it? No. And I guess she went into another room and finally tried to do it and came back and said, okay, what is it? And now she's at UPenn in their nursing program. And she uses the maps. She credits the maps for getting her through the nursing program at UPenn.
Wow.
Wow. You should see her notes because that's how she thinks.
Isn't that interesting? I got to tell you, talk about, and this is one of the things, we're all about equity here, and every kid learns differently, but it's especially difficult. You were a teacher in L.A., for goodness sake. You know this better, far better than I do 100%. Here in Maine. There's so many kids from other countries, okay, English language learners, different cultures, et cetera, et cetera. What you said before, everybody sees the same thing, and a human brain is a human brain, but we don't hear things the same way. I like that. Right. Okay, talk about you've seen this with ELL kids. ELL, English language learners. Well, how's it work with them? Yeah, talk.
Well, it's I was, trained. The majority of my students were English learners in LA Unified. And first of all, I just always want to say, I'm asking the right person. There you go. Yes, I just stand in awe of the kids that have to simultaneously acquire content and a language. I always just kind of have to give it a moment of what that is like. And I just stand in awe of them. So I'm just going to start there. But let's say you're a student and you are, you're starting to become more conversational, right, in your English language, but you're still missing things. This happens to me. My in-laws live in Costa Rica, and when I'm there, I'm constantly trying to translate in my head. It's exhausting. And I kind of follow it to some degree. But imagine that that's the way you are in your classroom, and you're trying to translate all day, and then the teacher puts up a visual, and you know exactly what kind of thinking they're asking you to do.
Yeah.
How much less stress that would be. You're like, oh, okay, I know what you want me to do. I've got that. So there's the emotional aspect of it that I think it really lowers the stress level. But also our need is to get them into academic language proficiency, right? And so it's a visual language, and it gives you kind of the visual context of signal words. And so you put that academic language in context on a map, And then they're able to speak off of the map using that language being taught. And then you start to have more academic discourse in your classroom with a real scaffold and support for the students. You can use the maps to target different language acquisition levels, right? So everyone should be thinking in the same way. I shouldn't say to you, oh, your English isn't very good. I'm going to give you a simpler way of thinking. Nope, that's not the way it works. We're all going to think in the same way. We're all going to use
thinking's thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but I may scaffold with this visual, right? But I'm not going to ask you to think in a way that doesn't respect your ability. You can
Sarah, I got to ask,
what
do you need to teach this? And I was asked because on your website, we're not talking about things you hold up and say, see, kids, here's a placard. It's like a Rorschach thing. Okay, now think like this. Okay, it looked to me that the kids were working on a technological device. Okay, how does it manifest itself in the classroom? Okay, how do you teach?
Well, when we teach it, we go
or use them. I should say, how do you use thinking maps?
Right.
I'm sorry, better way to say it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So how we roll it out. If you want to hear about that, I can tell you about that. But in the classroom, as I am, I'm putting a visual to what I'm already teaching. It shouldn't change what you're teaching. What you're giving your kids is a concrete representation. So as I teach, I'm integrating it into my lesson. So fine, as I'll go back to the, I'm teaching area and perimeter, right? And they always get area and they always get perimeter, but they don't get area and perimeter together. So I'm going to be teaching them that using, we're going to think about it. Let's talk about everything we know about area. So if I say everything we know about, that tells me I'm asking you to brainstorm. Every kid in my class should know that they're going to create what we call a circle map. And this is key. I don't want them going around talking about circle maps and bubble maps and double bubble maps. I want them to know the kind of thinking that they're doing. So as a teacher, we encourage teachers not to say, what map would we use? I want them to say, what kind of thinking are we doing? And if their brain is wired when they hear the language, tell me everything you know about, everyone is making the same visual. Then I say, okay, now let's compare and contrast the two. The minute they hear that, they know that I'm asking them to make a different visual that represents that thought process. And it gives them, now they have to step up to a higher level, right? Comparing and contrasting is a higher level thought process. Then as far as them, that's the teacher's version, right? So I've looked at my standard, I've looked at my objective, and it tells me what kind of thinking I ask my students to do. On the student's end, once it becomes a tool, right, it's how they think about things, then they should be using them to take notes. One of my favorite ways is they make them in groups. So having kids have a sustained conversation in a classroom is a challenge. At least it was a challenge for me. I'll speak for myself, right? You have everything from like talking sticks to discussion starters, right? Think, pair, share, that's over in 30 seconds. But if I had them working around a map, right, constructing their thinking together, they would talk 30 minutes, 40 minutes about the content because they were constructing the map together. And then at the end, I don't need the map, Larry. It served its purpose. It's not the product. It's the process. And I also like that they're able to pick ones that show how they're thinking about it. So not everyone chooses the same map to think about something in the same way, which is also a beautiful thing.
This is pretty cool. I got to tell you, I got to ask Sarah, you go in your professional development. Okay, you're the VP.
Yeah.
Okay, professional development. So what are the questions when you go into a school district? Let's say they've already brought the product or whatever. What are the questions that come up, okay, from the educators? Here's Sarah. Hi, I'm Sarah. Okay, any questions? What are the questions? Yeah.
Initially, it's people think it's a graphic organizer, and they're sitting there like, I'm here for, X number of days to learn about that. I have to tell you, Larry, that's one of the beautiful thing about training this is it makes sense to teachers. So by midday, they're in. I mean, it is such a joy. I feel like I'm giving people a gift. Mainly, it's the questions, honestly, are, is this going to stick around? Because so many initiatives come and go.
Right,
the question is, how do I get everyone to do this? Because they understand the importance of it being a whole school model, right? That this is a tool that everyone uses, so you can get to that automaticity and consistency. It's really more about how are we going to make this happen and less about what are you talking about.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole course in and of itself.
It is. Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. Okay? it really is. It's a whole different way to think. And I like that because it goes across every, one of the things that always annoyed me when I was in school, the math teachers expected you to know math. The science teacher expected you to like and know science. And, of course, that's absurd. Not everybody is good at science, not everybody's good at math, not everybody's good at social studies, okay? But they didn't get that. To my way of thinking, and the reason to me is because they never knew, of course, it was a long time ago, how I thought, okay? And once you break that down and you teach, to me, I'm using me as an example, the way I think, okay, or creating a way for me to think, okay, that makes all the difference in the world, okay? It wasn't that I was stupid that I didn't like math. I don't think in math terms. I only saw things. I was a history teacher, so I saw things. What's what I'm looking for? Rationally, they had to be there. They were facts, okay, as opposed to ideas. I never did understand why anybody would use algebra in the world. Look how many people do. Okay, calculus, come now. Who needs that? Yeah,
right.
It's that simple. And the reason was because they weren't teaching me how to think. They were just throwing crap at me. Okay, and if I didn't get it, that was too bad. They passed me anyway. It's just really a good thing. I got to tell you. Okay, how many is it across the country? It's not. Is it just in LA? Where are you guys now?
It's across the country. I'm in Los Angeles, but it's everywhere. Like we're literally from coast to coast. So
do you attend any of the exhibitions in education, ISTE and that sort of thing? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we go to conferences if we have if we're presenting. It's something you have to see and experience. So it's very hard to just walk by and say, oh, look at those. So we often present at conferences, and we give them an idea of this tool, and it's the simplest things I think in teaching that are the most impactful often, right?
Well, the fun thing is you got to teach schools and educators to think differently. That's the fun part about this. Yeah. Yes.
It changed how I thought once I was trained in it. I stopped trying to teach the program, and I started really looking at my curriculum, whatever the program was, and I would think, how am I asking my kids to think in this lesson?
Exactly.
Ooh, that was a big shift for me. And I know it sounds crazy, but honestly, thinking about what was my expectation for their thinking changed how I thought about everything that I was handed to teach.
And how they're graded and everything else. I mean, it's just it's really just it's fascinating. Sarah, we got to go. This was wonderful. I really learned a lot. Thank you so much. Continued good luck for you and for the product. I think it's wonderful. Okay,
Thank
we
you.
got the
Thank
word.
You for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Believe me, and I'll send you a link so you can share this with everybody. Okay.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Larry. Have a good day.
Thank you. You take care. You too. You can put out you won't need your umbrella for long. Okay. It's LA.
It won't. It's true. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye. Sarah McNeil, everybody, VP of Professional Development over at thinkingmaps.com. It's cool. Okay? All right, we'll archive over at ace-ed.org. I'm Larry Jacobs. Thanks for listening, and you have a great day wherever you might be. It's May 2nd.